Dawes' favorite.
I was just about to say, never believe Dawes when he tells you that you're his favorite, because I've heard him say that to so many different people today, and he is lying to probably every single one of those people. Like, I don't know at this point.
I feel lied to and betrayed. I'm not gonna lie.
That's why he's not casting, but instead on the couch. It wasn't a choice or his back. He was getting outcasted from the rest of us because we're all onto his tricks.
No, you're. Oh,
but,
yeah.
Hey, you never know.
You never know. I mean, Paradox Pokemon have been quite good as well, but maybe not the time for a Ditto. Here we have our two players on stage and ready to go. So let's go ahead and talk about Nick first, because Nick is the player that is on your screen right now. And again, Nick is a veteran player. He's been able to accomplish a lot within his career, and to see him come back and get a chance to play in Scarlet and Violet, I can't wait to see how his approach to the game has really been able to stack up. He did incredibly well in some of the online tours leading up to this event, and he's also a Dallas regional champion. He got first at that event in 2019. So a lot of accomplishments to his name, multiple regional championship wins. Maybe he's able to get a repeat here. And his team is also really interesting. We're gonna see more Iron Hands. How do you feel about that?
Hey, honestly, considering it is the top usage coming into this event, I'm looking for an Iron Hands to prove me wrong. Just what I have personally gotten to see with my two eyes has not been necessarily what I've wanted to see from this Pokemon. So I'm willing to have anybody come out here and prove me wrong, because I want to see why it does have that 51% usage that it has. And it's definitely stacked with a pretty strong team around it, making use of other Paradox Pokemon. It'll be so nice. But looking on the other end, it's not going to be a Paradox form of it, but just that regular old Tyranitar. That is definitely a Pokemon that has been really good way back and standing up through things. But there has been some talk about the fact that it's not necessarily the greatest right now, that there's just better tools out there. So I'm intrigued with the Tyranitar in particular from Yotam's end.
Yeah, Yotam is actually not a player that I'm super familiar with. So I am really excited to see how he's going to perform. He's got a 7-1 record right now, and with a pretty unique team. I love that you called out the Tyranitar there. I think that's one Pokemon that we really haven't seen much of, and even when you look at Iron Thorns being available, I think that is a really great choice. To just bring in the Tyranitar instead. There's definitely utility there. If it is going to be able to set the sand, it does have Sandstream as its ability, but it also has access to a lot of really great coverage options. And with Assault Vest, which is what this variant is, I actually think that Tyranitar can stick around, because that's kind of the biggest issue for Tyranitar right now, is that there's a lot of things that hit it for super effective damage.
Yeah, that's, I mean, you say it's like the biggest, and I think it is like the biggest and Link only. Like, honestly, like some Pokemon, you could think that they're so cool, but if they're just not really good into what's popular in the metagame right now, like no matter how good they are in their own rights, it's going to be really difficult for them to be able to stand on their own 2 feet. Hopefully with the mechanic of terrestrialization that is available now, there could be a potential way that we could see it utilized in a way that maybe makes up for that fact, because there definitely is a couple of different looks. I mean, flying type Tyranitar is definitely one that has been popular with the fact that you can get rid of the fact that it's going to be taking these heavy hits from ground and being able to have some sort of ab move and way to hit things like a Mugus on the opposing end is kind of nice.
So I have a little bit more information on Yotam, so I'd really like to share that, since they are a bit of a newer player to VGC. They're a player from New Jersey, and he has also top 4'd a ton of online tournaments leading up to this one. So I believe this might be his first in-person tournament in Scarlet and Violet. So really excited to see how he's going to do today, as we are going to get a look at this game number 1, looking at how a lot of these Pokemon are going to interact with each other. I see a lot of fake out pressure here on Nick's team in terms of just looking at the Pokemon that are available, and then we'll see what happens as we take a look at leads.
Well, to start off, a lead that we have seen a lot of, the Fluttermanes all around, Talonflame as well on the end of the field, going up against the Arcanine on next end. These are Pokemon that have been so popular today, and for good reason.
They have been really good, and I'm looking at the Talonflame right now because Yotam set is pretty standard. You've got the Brave Bird, also the Tailwind, but also those two tech choices that we see as in the Will-O-Wisp and the Taunt. So when you're looking across the board, not too many great targets here in order to click the Will-O-Wisp or Taunt into, but you do have the ability to go for the Tailwind, get some speed control online, which is not something that he necessarily needs in this instance, but it could help out with maybe something like the Flutter Mane being able to actually get some damage off before it gets targeted into. Nick on the other side, though, is trying to figure out exactly how he wants to play this, and I don't think that Snarl is too much of a bad option. It gives you some spread damage and also breaks the Gale Wings on that Talonflame too for later.
What'll be at least a protect for the Flutter Mane, so it's not going to feel the negative effects of any Snarl. And the fact that Tailwind does still have the priority for this turn, will be able to go for that priority Tailwind in this situation. Shadow Ball from Nick's end is going to be doing absolutely nothing, and sure enough, it will be that Snarl. So there won't be any priority Brave Bird coming out from this Talonflame in following turns, but matter the fact is there is still going to be this speed on Yotam's side, as well as the fact that Talonflame just naturally is a pretty speedy Pokemon.
Yeah, I think here too, I mean, they're both going to be playing a pretty defensive game, with the speed now being on Yotam's side with the Tailwind setup. Nick is kind of on the back foot. You could go for maybe a priority extreme speed, but you don't have a fantastic target on Yotam's side, and so at this point you're trying to find ways to stall out the Tailwind since you don't really have access to too much speed control yourself unless you want to try to get some Icy Winds off with the Iron Bundle. Otherwise, yeah, you really just need to try to outlast. And Amoonguss is not a terrible way to do that if you're able to switch that in and make sure it stays safe there. Talonflame a little bit precarious on the other side.
Yeah, it really depends on how Yotam decides to target onto this turn, because a double target into that slot could definitely be pretty negative, especially with the fact that the Flutter Mane did decide to go for a Protect. So if this is a double up into the other slot, it could be a really sticky situation, but no, the Brave Bird into the Flutter Mane at this point. I'm saying that the Flutter Mane little bit dangerous, but the Shadow Ball at least will go in, and that is going to be dealing a good chunk of damage into the Amoonguss, bringing it down to just over half and getting that special defense drop.
Yeah, that's a pretty good chance on the Shadow Ball to get that special defense drop, and that's going to allow this Flutter Mane on Yotam's side to really start to snowball some damage. So even if you aren't going to target the Amoonguss with the Talonflame on Yotam's side, then you do have the ability to maybe spread out that Talonflame damage to another Pokemon, especially if Nick decides to make a switch here. That Flutter Mane has really been kept in check this entire time here by Yotam, so it's really on Nick to try to stall out these final turns of Trick Room and then get into a position where he can start to actually dish out damage.
Still a stall, but it's the Tailwind that we got to be stalling out. But really the same concept in all of this. You just have to be weathering the storm that is being thrown at you. So yet again, going for a pivot. The Flutter Mane would not appreciate a Shadow Ball, so it will be the Arcanine coming in place. Intimidate down on the Talonflame will be nice as well, considering it is an attacking Pokemon. Amoonguss for this turn, gonna stay nice and safe behind a Protect. And now we get to see where the target's coming out. Brave Bird, that definitely would have done a good chunk of damage into the Amoonguss. The great Protect on that end. The Shadow Ball, though, never targeting into the same Pokemon from Yotam's end. That is going to deal a bunch of damage into the Arcanine, and things are slowly getting chunked down on Nick's side of the field.
Yeah, this is going to be a little bit rough. You do have the Amoonguss to be able to regenerate some of its health after it does get switched back in and comes back out, but it also has a Citrus Berry, and so the funny thing about the way that the damage fell for this Amoonguss is that with the special defense drop, one more Shadow Ball from the Flutter Mane would be enough to finish it off without it actually proccing the Citrus Berry. It just is shy of that 50% mark, so that's not going to be a way for Nick to keep that Amoonguss alive. He's going to have to be able to switch it out in order to get that Regenerator health back. Otherwise, though, you don't really have many other options here either, as the only other way that you'd be able to get some protection there is just through the leftovers on the Gothitelle, but that's not a Pokemon that he brought in.
I mean, thanks to the Intimidate drop, the Brave Bird from the Talonflame is not going to be doing enough damage onto the Amoonguss, so that is a live that it can live at this point. Bringing it down to 25 health, now thanks to the Citrus Berry considerably more, but it would have been all down to where this Flutter Mane targeted into. This is the first turn that Yotam has targeted into the same Pokemon. The Amoonguss being very safe considering it had already protected. The Amoonguss is gone nonetheless. Flutter Mane will take the Flare Blitz, bring it down a good chunk, but still a healthy amount of damage. And now the Tailwind is done. but there is still the fact that you can try and get it set back up and just keep going for the speed. Talonflame is naturally speedy.
Yeah, that was really good information for Nick to find out about how much that Brave Bird did under and Intimidate. So knowing that there was a survival there is something that Nick can kind of note down for later. Looking ahead to the next few turns of this game, you've got the Flutter Mane back in here on Nick's side, and Talonflame actually isn't going to have the Gale Wings pressure anymore, so no more priority Tailwind on the board either for this Talonflame to go for on Yotam's side. Flutter Mane, on the other hand, though, putting in a lot of work here, but I just wonder, does Yotam try to go for maybe a confirmed KO here onto the Arcanine, or just try to get that Tailwind set back up?
Yeah, it does come down to how things are trained at this point, but Flutter Mane, you want to be making sure that you're keeping on par with other Flutter Manes, so would be outspeeding the Talonflame if desiring to try and hit into that Pokemon to ensure that the Tailwind taking off of the board for good. And it's going to be time to Terastallize into that Ghost type. We've seen a lot of defensive Terra types coming out today, but this is really nice because this is just going to make sure that Shadow Ball is dealing so much more damage to make sure that you're picking up the KO that you need in this spot. Targeting into the Talonflame, it's going to be enough to pick up this KO.
Yeah, Flutter Mane is just such a fast Pokemon, so being able to get that damage off right away ensures that Talonflame cannot set up the Tailwind again. In response, though, that Shadow Ball is absolutely devastating here, bringing down Nick's Flutter Mane to that Focus Sash.
Flutter Mane does hit for a lot of damage. It will be KO'd at least over on Yotam's end, though, thanks to that Flare Blitz. Did take a 2-hit KO, but that will be a double KO at least for Nick at this point.
Yeah, so Nick does have the Iron Bundle in the back, but you still see Yotam with 2 final Pokemon remaining. That Great Tusk is going to be hitting the field as well as the Iron Bundle. So we do have 2 Paradox Pokemon here on the side of Yotam. They can combo together pretty well, but also Iron Bundle is not one of those Pokemon on Yotam's side that you're really going to be happy to take a Earthquake on. You do have Protect, though, so Yotam's Iron Bundle could go for Protect and just kind of help that Great Tusk do some damage with Earthquake, but also the Great Tusk has access to Headlong Rush and Close Combat, so there's multiple ways that you could really see some damage go through, but Close Combat's not going to work on the Flutter Mane right now.
Well, at this point, too, you want to make sure that you're not leaving yourself in a position that you can get hit from with Flutter Mane in retaliation. So I feel like with the Iron Bundle on this turn, you would want to be trying to go for something to make sure, because you should be theoretically the fastest thing out there and available at this position. The Extreme Speed is just going to be good for a little bit of chip, and I really like the Icy Wind here. Sure, the Flutter Mane did go for Protect this time around, so it won't be KO'd thanks of this, but it is going to dish that damage out to the Arcanine. Not enough for the KO, but next turn it should surely be the double KO if, you know, the Great Tusk just didn't go to finish it off right now.
Yeah, Headlong Rush is going to be a nice, super effective attack there into the Arcanine, but you do see those defense drops coming through, and so this could play a role later on in the game as you look at Nick going down to his final 2 Pokemon as well. And this is a really nice position to be in. You could see that Nick was kind of hovering over the Perish Song option that's available on his Flutter Mane. Maybe you go for that, but it's very risky because what if you also knock out your own Pokemon with that too? Not a really great way to pivot around that right now, but it's Iron Bundle versus Iron Bundle. You've got the Great Tusk versus a very low Flutter Mane here. Let's see what happens on this next turn.
What's really interesting is the booster energy that was used for Nyx and onto the Iron Bundle, being able to get that heightened speed. And that is such a big boost to specifically the speed stat when that is the stat that's going to be prevalent in. So at this point, too, with the fact that it's not actually a matched booster energy on Yotam's end, it's not a speed tie. At this point, you're just faster.
Yeah, that's a very good point. But do you try to go after the damage on the Great Tusk, or you know, how do you really spread this out? Yotam has a few options here to, like, I think you just have to be able to take out this Iron Bundle here, but the Protect comes through. It's going to be a double Protect there on the Flutter Mane, as you see the Great Tusk also go for a Protect here. So nice read here from Nick to just try to get out some damage with the Icy Wind too to keep slowing things down.
The vibe for the speed control, at least for the partner Pokemon, at this point is the Icy Wind will hit into the Iron Bundle, and it's an Icy Wind in retaliation. It's so funny at this point because they're just dropping each other's speed at this point, as both of the partner Pokemon are gonna stay Notice to me too the fact that the Flutter Mane does only have that 1 HP since it did live on the Focus Sash. So that's not even a thing of, hey, you're not going to have the speed. It is a, you need to outspeed so you don't get KO'd.
This is still a difficult position to be in. I mean, Nick has been able to preserve that Flutter Mane for a few turns, but at this point, what are you going to be able to do with it? The Icy Winds here from the Iron Bundle are really important to make sure that the Flutter Mane is going to be also something that can stick around on the field to get another attack off. And so not being able to get that into the Great Tusk is a little bit iffy, but we're seeing the terrestrialization here from Yotam's side finally hit the field, and it's going to be the Ice Terra onto that Iron Bundle.
Yeah, definitely saving it for way later in the battle. We're bringing that out, and it'll be the Icy Wind going first over on Yotam's side. That will be enough damage to be getting the KO onto the Flutter Mane, and it's going to be just one left for Nick.
Yeah, it's going to come down to that Iron Bundle on Nick's side, and if it's going to be able to do enough damage here as the Icy Wind's going to be able to connect onto both of Yotam's Pokemon, and after all of those defense drops there from the Headlong Rush, that Great Tusk is going to get knocked out too. So it's Iron Bundle versus Iron Bundle. Can they do enough damage to each other? Oh no, does it come down to Hydro Pumps hitting?
Well, the Hydro Pump is one of those moves that you never want to be relying on it at the end of the game. The thing is there is different options on both ends. The Freeze Dry, sure, it's not great into just a straight icy, but it will be able to do enough in this ace, and that'll be a clean first game for Yotam, but a really close one.
It was a super, super close one. Yotam's Iron Bundle actually ending up being able to outspeed. So that was really cool to be able to see there, especially because, you know, the Covert Cloak was able to keep it very safe there in that match. And so when you have those other Icy Winds firing off into Nick's Iron Bundle, you're going to stay very safe there. So hats off to Yotam. Also, that Terra Ice onto the Iron Bundle, really nice to ensure that we were going to end up seeing even more damage come out there from that Freeze Dry. Nick even looked a little surprised there as well that Yotam's Iron Bundle was able to get the knockout.
Yeah, I mean, that was just a good amount of damage, maybe coming right down to particulars, but of course we won't have to, we don't know, some things aren't meant for us to know, but still, you know that there's a lot of pieces that are going right for you at this point. Now you have to figure out how you can be putting them together in this game too, because when it's coming down to that last turn in a Freeze Dry, you weren't 100% sure if it or not. I mean, you know it couldn't be that much closer. So what would you like to see in this game too from that?
Well, I think that Nick has some really strong options that we didn't get a chance to see in that game number one. You saw that there was the opportunity to go for a Perish Song there from the Flutter Mane, so you know that Perish Trap is an option with the Gothitelle also being on this team with Shadow Tag. Now, is it a question of, does Nick feel confident enough to be able to pivot around the Pokemon well enough to be able to actually use that mode of his team? I thought the pieces of the team that he brought were fine, but maybe in a different order, maybe just being able to see a little bit more power come out from that Flutter Mane or that Iron Bundle. Maybe the Iron Bundle actually coming out a little bit too late in that first game to really make an impact there, especially when Yotam's Iron Bundle was able to withstand those Icy Winds.
And I feel like that's such a cool difference in the items being ran and just the sheer speed that you're going to be allowed with your booster energy, as opposed to something like the Covert Cloak to make sure that you're not getting that secondary effect of the move. So no matter what's being thrown your way, it's only just damage and not getting those drops is a really cool just difference in how it's built that really came into effect into that end game, because then even through the protects was able to then go for an Icy Wind after outspeeding the Iron Bundle that speed you're able to drop when they couldn't do that back.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it's definitely a tough position to be in. I think that Yotam handled that really, really well, not only pressuring with the speed control with the Talonflame, but then also preserving that Iron Bundle for later. And so, you know, hey, Yotam found success in that game number one, so we're seeing the Talonflame and the Flutter Mane again.
A great lead, and the Iron Bundle will make a quick appearance over on Nick's end, paired up to that Amoonguss, and this is going to be the turn that we see those booster energies activate, one on each side of the field, the Iron Bundle for Nick and the Flutter Mane for Yotam.
Yeah, so this is another great way for you to be able to get some speed control here. I mean, just taking a look at just how all of these Pokemon are trained. You have the Talonflame that can go for that priority Tailwind if you really aren't super sure about how these Pokemon are matching up against each other. But also in general, Iron Bundle is actually going to have a faster base speed than the Flutter Mane. So let's see how these Pokemon are trained and whether or not this booster energy really is going to end up paying off for Nick here.
Yeah, and I feel like it's just the base level that these Pokemon that just have the speed, I feel like I'd be really surprised to see them just not go for the fastest that they can be, considering that you know it's going to be a Pokemon that you're facing down against and you want to make sure you're outspeeding that. It's not like you're just worrying about outspeeding the Talonflame. This Pokemon is everywhere. You want to make sure that you're outspeeding opposing Iron Bundles and whatnot. The Flutter Mane, though, it will be enough with the Tailwind. That's the nice thing about the priority, to be getting that clean one-hit KO onto the Iron Bundle on the other side. So that Pokemon taken care of. In return, though, is going to be put to bed with thanks to the Explorer from the Amoonguss.
Yeah, but is this a trade that you're happy with here? Nick does lose the Iron Bundle in favor of putting the Flutter Mane on Yotam's side to sleep. You do get a free switch here, so you are able to bring in this Iron Hands completely free. But where do you go from here? You got to make sure that you have plenty to deal with. And Iron Hands is being run in a couple of different ways, and here's one of the ways that it has been run. It has a little bit of setup here with the Swords Dance or Belly Drum. Actually, one of those other moves to really help it get off some more damage. But is this going to be enough? I guess you could Rage Powder away here and make sure that you're going to be able to get that Sword Stance up for free. But this is a tough call here for Nick, whether you go for Protect or Rage Powder.
Yeah, because at this point, too, the damage that you're wanting to be taken away from the Iron Hand, sure, the Amoonguss isn't necessarily going to appreciate either. So opting to go and protect that slot on this turn. So if it wanted to be a hit into the Iron Hands, it could be different, but instead that taunt that we've seen on so many Talonflame today hit into that Amoonguss slot, or at least trying to shut that down, but it's not going to be doing anything. Mandatory turn of sleep for the Flutter Mane, and that is going to be a free Swords Dance, baby.
Oh, that's gonna feel really good here. Nick has finally gotten the Iron Hand set up. This is the first time it's appeared in this match, but it might be able to get some work done here. Looking at the Fire Punch, that's a really nice coverage option here, especially when you also have the ability to go for the Terra Fire. You can just add that additional same type attack bonus if you want to commit the Terastallization to this Pokemon. But you also have a lot of nice staying power here with an increased attack Drain Punch. So maybe you're able to keep that alive there too. But the Talonflame is still putting on a lot of pressure here on Yotam's side. You've got the taunt still available. Amoonguss did just protect, and that means it could be a free taunt.
Definitely could be at this point, so definitely having to make some decisions. Taunt will be hitting to the Amoonguss. We have that little insider information that Amoonguss will be fine at least for a short time with that, so we'll get to that later. For now, with another turn to sleep for the Flutter Mane, it is going to be a heap of damage with that Fire Punch and just a little pull and puff to break the Gale Wings into the Talonflame.
Flutter Mane hanging on here is pretty impressive. It does have the ability to maybe wake up in this next turn and then get some damage off before it ends up getting knocked out. But Talonflame as well has shut off a lot of the utility that Amoonguss would want to provide here on Nick's team. So no more chance to go for Protect, Spore, or Rage Powder, which feels like a pretty big loss for this particular Pokemon, especially when your Iron Hands hasn't been taking any damage and Pollen Puff isn't really putting the work that you would have maybe wanted it to see here, when it's going to be really useful for your own team.
Yeah, and that's kind of the tricky situation, because the last thing you want is to all of a sudden let your Iron Hands that has this boosted attack stat, you already let a Pokemon go down pretty early on in this. You don't want that fate to be falling to a second Pokemon. So Amoonguss at this point is going to be swapping out in favor of the Flutter Mane, as the Iron Hands is going to try and stay safe and protect for this turn. This does give another option for Yotam to attack and to potentially wake up. It will be a huge Brave Bird into the Flutter Mane. Of course, it'll hold on thanks to that Focus Sash. Flutter Mane actually on Yotam's end just going to take another turn of sleep, and that's Tailwind gone.
Well, Talonflame is still on the field, so it could go for another Tailwind if it wants to, but that Flutter Mane not waking up is pretty devastating here for Yotam. It could afford to get knocked out here since Yotam has 2 more Pokemon waiting in the wings, but you're really trying to look at stopping this Iron Hands right now, which is putting on so much pressure with the fact that it went for Swords Dance and it still has the ability to go for a same type attack bonus Fire Punch if it wants to. Does Nick get greedy here and try to go for another Swords Dance? He might be able to, especially knowing that Flutter Mane's a pretty nice target on the other side.
I feel like that's so dangerous because
that's very
you
dangerous.
could have like the coolest and best attack stat in the world, but if you never actually get the chance to actually attack with it, all of a sudden you're in a rough spot. Will be a Shadow Ball though from Nick's end to take care of the Flutter Mane over on Yotam's side. And now be down to the Talonflame. It will be a Tailwind, not priority, but still getting a free opportunity to set it up in this turn because of the fact that there is no attack from the Iron Hands, but instead a Swords Dance plus 4 attack. I'm not gonna lie, I'm intrigued with how it's gonna make out. You do have to combat with the fact that there's the speed on the other side that you could just get KO'd.
There's a Great Tusk on the other side is what I'm looking at right now as the biggest problem for this Iron Hands at the moment. With the Tailwind at its back, you're not really worried about Talonflame taking an Earthquake here either. So if you wanted to just go for spread damage, that's gonna feel pretty good. This is a rough position right now for Nick to be in. I think this Great Tusk, yes, it has a little bit of trouble there. I'm not gonna lie. You know, Great Tusk is not going to be one of the bulkiest of Pokemon, as we saw it not take that Icy Wind super well before. But it still has the ability to put on a ton of offensive pressure here. We're going to see a Terra.
Yeah, and it's offensive pressure that actually gets a chance to do something with the speed that Yotam has on his end. But I'm still intrigued. But it will be the terrestrialization into the ground type from the Great Tusk. So I'm sure you can guess what is going to happen next. At least the Iron Hands for this turn is going to be spared from how that's going to go down. Brave Bird into the Flutter Mane at that point. It only had to do the 1 HP just to be picking that off. Make sure that you could be taking a Pokemon at least on this turn as a headlong rush, hitting into the Protect.
Yeah, so I think at this point, and Yotam has identified that Iron Hands is going to give him a lot of trouble if he's not going to be able to take it out. But I think one of the other things that Nick is okay with is that you've got the Amoonguss in. It's going to be able to be at full health here, and now that that taunt is gone, you can actually go for something like a Rage Powder to be able to redirect away any attack that Great Tusk could go for. It still has access to Earthquake though, and so that's something that would just end up doing spread damage, and Talonflame doesn't care about that.
That's exactly it, because if it was just the headlong rushes that you were worried about, all right, perfect, let's bring this Amoonguss in, let's sacrifice this so the greater good of this Iron Hand to be able to do what it wants in this situation. But no Rage Powder in the world is going to be able to get rid of this Earthquake, and having protected on the last turn, can't go for the Protect and see if you could get a Spore or something to land either, because I don't even think Amoonguss would make it through the turn, let's be honest at this point. But a late Terra at this point, at least make sure that you're not going to be taking the most damage in the world from a Brave Bird. It will be into that water type.
Yeah, I think the Terra here is smart. I don't know if Iron Hands really wants to go for the Terra Fire either, because it's still going to be weak to those ground type attacks. So Rage Powder here, and see the taunt too.
Yeah, taunt to shut it down for next turn, as now the Earthquake rings out. Rage Powder does not care about that whatsoever. And that is going to deal a good chunk of damage, a little bit more than that. This Iron Hand is going down, and this Amoonguss doesn't look long for this world.
No, I think that's going to be an Amoonguss that Yotam will be able to quickly take out of here, even though it's going to be able to regenerate some of its health with that Citrus Berry. This is still going to be tough here. You can see Nick throwing in a towel now. Yotam, newcomer to VGC, taking a huge win here on stream.
With thanks of Pokemon like Great Tusk and Talonflame, best of both worlds. A Pokemon you like, a Pokemon I like, and played so well done to be moving on into the next round and that much closer into top 32. I believe even with the loss next round, that should be guaranteed. That should be good. But no, so well played at this point. Really well done. And there's always, you know, that extra little like, hey, newcomers doing super, super good. Like, I don't know, it's exciting for the growth of the game. It shows that
really is.
anyone can put in the work and come out here and be taking these victories.
Yeah, Yotam's been doing a great job in the online circuit, being able to put out top performance after top performance. Just to see him come to an event and really show that skill in person is also very exciting. And Nick is such a strong player, so that is a very big feat for him to end up taking the win and also securing just an 8-1 record to enter into the final round of today. I hope he's really happy and really proud of himself. And for Nick too, like, it was such a tough matchup, and I think that Yotam played that so beautifully to be able to play with the speed control and also play around some of those other techs that were on Nick's team.
Yeah, and I would have loved to see how things were maybe differing if there wasn't the second sword stance, but instead of attack. But it could also be one of those things that it's like, all right, I can see the next few turns and how they're going to be playing out, and it's honestly not positive anyways. So if I could get this sword stance and my opponent makes this misplay and I could run away with things, but it was just in a tough position because that speed control is so important in some of these matchups, especially when you have Pokemon that are going to be able to terastallize and deal these huge earthquakes and take these KOs. Like, you're already in a position where it's tough. Like, what do you do?
I actually don't even know. I mean, with the second sword stance, yes, I think Great Tusk absolutely gets knocked out there, but it's really the special defense where that Pokemon is lacking. So Icy Wind, very good, especially after the special defense drop. But its actual defense is not that bad either. So maybe was going to be able to withstand something there, but better not risk it. Just knock it out. Earthquake, Terra Ground, Earthquake, good.
Iron Hands and knock.
No. I actually think that there was a world there where Nick is able to get the win. I think going for that second sword stance is always very risky, but you have to be able to do something, and I think that with the Rage Powder on the Amoonguss, that's an easy way to maybe try to secure some knockouts there, but the Talonflame was left alive for a long time. Yeah. And so the taunt to be able to shut that down really left Iron Hands incredibly vulnerable. Yeah. And so there just was too much support on the opposing side next to that Great Tusk that made that really tough.
In the world where the Iron Bundle wasn't lost so early on and being able to have access to that speed control down the line, that's where I would have really liked to see Iron Hands, because Iron Hands is not, there's a lot of Paradox Pokemon that are known for their speed. Iron Hands is not one of them. You definitely need the help of some sort of speed control in these situations where you can get one hit KO'd to make sure that you can have the use of the Pokemon. And it would have been a situation I would have liked to see you get rid of the Talonflame and you're able to just control the speed yourself. But it was also just a really tough position where you did lose that Iron Bundle. Such a strong Pokemon on the first turn that you don't have access to that any longer. So even if you didn't go for the sword stance, I feel like it would have been a situation where we would have been in that spot where that Great Tusk would have been there and it would have been terastallizing and it would go for the Earthquake and we would watch that Iron Hands leave us, like, regardless of how that sword stance went down.
Yeah, I think it's still a very tough position, but Nick played to his outs. Yep. So, and that's sometimes what you got to do in this game, and to be able to find that position, identify what he needed to do, and try to execute it on, I think is also very skillful. And there's a reason why he was sitting at 7-1 going into this match.
Yes, 100%.
Yeah, so I can't wait to see how the rest of the field is going to shake out, but that's round number 9. Wrapped up here, and we got to figure out who else is going to be trying to make it forward to day 2.
And it's 9:30. Woo!
It is 9:30 here on the East Coast.
VGC that we'd be wrapping up sooner.
Hey, it's 10 rounds, and 10 rounds is definitely a slog to get through, but it's a marathon, not a race.
It's true.
And so any players that are still sitting in here at this point, like you're almost there. You're almost there.
You can do it.
You got this. You got one more, and then you'll be done for the day. But I can't wait to hear Yotam's thoughts on this match. So let's head it over to Adam to break it down.
Thank you very much, guys. I'm joined by a round 9 winner, Yotam. First of all, I'm just going to say congratulations. I've been informed it's your first regional, and you are now 8-1.
That's right.
How is that feeling?
To tell you the truth, it feels kind of unbelievable, Adam. Yeah, I don't even know what to say. It's truly an incredible feeling.
Yeah, so talking to the other guys backstage, they said that you've been playing a lot online. You've been grinding that out. I heard top 4 on a bunch of online tournaments pretty consistently.
That's right.
So that, obviously, you bring it to an in-person event. has that transition, and it looks like you've made it easy, but how's that transition actually been?
You know, it's funny that you asked that. It's similar and different, right? The main differences are that, you know, when I'm playing the online tours in my living room, I'm able to speak like my plays aloud, like I'm able to think aloud, and I'm able to like get up and move, right? And I'm kind of naturally like kind of a fidgety kind of move aroundy kind of guy. And here in person, I can't do either of those things. I just have to sit and focus. So it's just like me, the Switch, and the opponent. So I guess the way that I kind of focus on things is different in person versus online, but of course like the play transfers pretty much seamlessly.
Yeah, at the end of the day, it's still Pokemon.
Exactly.
You're still playing the same game. Are you saying, and this is actually something I've been talking about with friends from different eras, are you doing like, when you play at home, you're doing like the rubber duck debugging method?
Oh, always, yeah.
Yeah,
absolutely.
It's a really interesting thing. Obviously, look it up if you guys don't know what it is, but
yeah.
It's certainly cool. So, what we've got, I mean, first time at a regional, that's already cool. Taking down a tip-top player
that's
on
right.
stream.
Yeah.
Just tell people at home, I mean, let's be honest, we're looking pretty hot for day 2 right now.
Jeez, I guess, yeah.
Just tell us a little bit more about yourself. Come on, you know, I don't usually let people do the introductions. We've seen it before. So let's give you that opportunity.
Sure, yeah, I mean, I've been playing VGC for 10 years or so on Showdown and on Cart. Just never really had the means to travel with like school and like work and relationships and things, but was really excited to start traveling to regionals in Scarlet and Violet. Yeah, not much else to say about myself. Yeah.
Yeah, no, I mean, was it Scarlet Violet? You were like, this is the time, this is where we're going?
Yeah, I mean, Scarlet and Violet was kind of the first time in my life that, you know, I've been like in a position where I'm like really settled down and able to kind of like travel and kind of like, you know, do this kind of lifestyle. So, yeah, I've always wanted to, but I'm glad, you know, better late than never, right?
Hey, and to come out, smash out a top performance already, it's got to be feeling good. Let's zoom in a little bit on the team.
Yeah.
I think your team can consider a lot of, but over the course of the day, we're kind of standardizing that team.
Yeah.
But what made you gravitate to that? Is it something you just practiced a lot, or were you feeling a little more like, this is just, you know, this is the one?
That's a great question, Adam. Yeah, so, you know, in Series 1, I was playing a lot of different things, like Annihilate and Mousehold, and like Dondozo Tatsugiri stuff, trying all kinds of different things. And then in Series 2, I was a little lost at first, and then through like a VGC draft league, I was connected with Justin Karras, and Justin kind of had this idea to do Great Tusk, Talonflame, hyper offense, and I was, you know, I trusted him right out of the gate, and so I was kind of immediately on board with it. So actually, it's his idea, and so we started piloting it several weeks ago now. Early iterations of this team where we had like Sylveon instead of Fluttermane, and we had like Cerulege instead of what is now. I forget. But anyway, so we'd been kind of iterating on this core, this Talonflame, Great Tusk Hyper offense core for a while, and it just felt really good from the get-go. Tusk feels really strong. It's frail on the special side, but if you can prevent it from taking any of those special hits, it can just put out so much damage. And so the team really clicked. It felt really good. Not that many people were using it, and not that many people knew how to approach it or knew how much damage it could actually output. So we kind of, you know, initially caught a lot of people off guard in those early like online tournaments. But then, as you've seen over the last few weeks, it's risen in usage, and people are kind of getting more used to it. But I still think it's really strong, and I think that you know, Justin Karras and I and Toller Webb, who's also running the same team, I think we've really finally honed in on you know, the best version of this.
Yeah, I mean, I talked about it with the others at the top of the day, and I just sort of, I think I may have gravitated a little bit to the earlier version, right? And like, I wasn't a big fan. It felt very unrefined. It felt just like straight hyper offense. But now you guys really have tuned it in, and seeing the performances of it, it feels like you're way further away from that team.
Yeah.
Is hyper offense kind of your preferred option, or, you know, do you prefer to mess around with some of the shenanigans that we have available?
I kind of like to try all kinds of different teams, to tell you the truth, Adam. Throughout the years, I've played everything from control to hyper offense to balance, you know, bulky balance stuff, trick room stuff. I kind of like to try it all. I'm the kind of player that once I find a team that clicks, like I'll know that that's the right team. It doesn't necessarily have to be a specific style. It's just once it feels right, you know, I kind of just full send it, if that makes sense.
Hey, that's awesome, and full send is definitely working out. So with everything, you know, going on, I think a lot of players, it's a long day, a lot of adrenaline. What are we feeling going into the last round?
Oh, geez, I am just...
Anything you want to avoid, maybe?
I don't even know who's at my record. Honestly, I don't even know. I think I'm okay with whatever at this point. I'm really happy to have performed this well thus far. So whatever happens, next round happens, and I'm okay with whatever. Yeah.
Yeah. You seem pretty chill, pretty excited either way.
Yeah.
Before I let you go, anyone you want to shout out? Starting off your in-person regional career.
Yeah, absolutely. Like I mentioned earlier, I want to shout out Justin Karras and Toller Webb for just the immense support and practice with me over the past few weeks and helping me kind of iterate on the team and kind of flowchart all the matchups and all the different lines and things. And then I also want to shout out my beautiful wife, Becky, who's watching this at home. She's my #1 supporter, and she supported me throughout all of this, and she's super happy for me. So, yeah.
I can't speak to your wife, but I can say Justin and Toller are fantastic people to surround yourself with, and yeah, they're both phenomenal team builders, and I'm glad. Honestly, it's great to see you doing so well. So before I let you go prep for round 10, I'll just let you know, and don't tell anyone else, but you are definitely my favorite. So good luck.
I saw you say that to Toller earlier. I was watching.
Toller called me on it too, so I don't know if you guys had a deal on it, but no, I mean it in that one. So good luck in round 10.
Thanks so much, Adam.
But we'll be back very shortly here in Orlando.